Hello, I'm the Miami Autism Dad, Victor Antunez, inclusive Miami Realtor, and this is the Autism Podcast at Miami's Community Newspapers. Today, I am with Irie Diaz of the Advocacy Network on Disabilities. Welcome to the show, Irie.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello and welcome. So tell me a little bit about yourself and the organization.
So the organization started in 1972 as a coalition of parents who wanted to have services for their adult children that had developmental disabilities in the community. I'm a clinical social worker by training, and I just kind of fell into this job and fell in love with it. Really fell in love with the disability community and everything that is possible.
You know, this parent focus, I'm seeing a common thread that a lot of these groups that are now very big like yours or parent to parent, you look at them from the outside and they look big enough to be like a government organization, but they've got roots in parents just taking it upon themselves to start a program. Now, the government does have a very big place in this. They bring the big dollars, but it's organizations like yours that bring you fill the gaps.
Correct.
Is what I like to say. Now, you said it was started in 72?
1972. We got incorporated in 1975 as the original name was Community Coalition for Developmental Handicaps and Retardation. And then retardation became not okay. And then handicaps became not okay. So we became CCDH, stands for nothing. And so we changed to Advocacy Network on Disabilities, which really is what we do. We're a network of people that help each other and create community and create support, and we're out to make the community inclusive for everyone.
Okay, that word inclusive, what does that word mean to you?
Inclusive means that everybody belongs and that it doesn't matter how you show up, you still belong, and you don't have to fight to have a seat at the table. We make a seat at the table for you, and there are many different ways to do that. And so we're constantly learning and finding new ways to make people feel like they belong. And
I've heard that phrase before, I see at the table. So can you give me a real world example of how you've done that? Somebody who's benefited?
So since I became the CEO for the Advocacy Network on Disabilities, one of the things that I've done is I have brought the chair and the voice of people with disabilities to every table. The table that looks at low-income housing, the table that looks at racial equity, the table that looks at women and gender and all the things. So all the communities, because there are people with disabilities in every community, and everybody works in a silo. And people with disabilities are not always included or thought about. Like, for example, people have community events and they don't think to have a sign language interpreter. People have to ask for one, and you have to ask for one 5 days in advance. And that's a way to let people that are deaf or hard of hearing know that they're not really welcomed or wanted, because you and I, who don't need a sign language interpreter, can decide in the morning that this afternoon we're going to go to this event, whatever it happened to be. But if I need a sign language interpreter, I have to make that decision 5 days ahead of time so that I can fully participate. So if the sign language interpreter is already there, I don't need to ask ahead of time, and I can just make the decision like everybody else. And that tells me as a person, I'm not deaf or hard of hearing, but if I was, it would tell me, you're welcomed here, we want you, and we're going to make it possible for you to come.
This is interesting because I've never had this conversation about sign language interpreters. So if you needed one, where would you go to for that, and who covers the charge of that, the cost of that?
So the organization should cover it. That's just my experience and my opinion, that the organization should cover it. Just like if I'm going to put an event together, I'm going to make sure that I have a space and that I offer drinks or whatever it is I'm going to offer. And so part of that thinking, I have to think about having a ramp so that if somebody's using a wheelchair, people come and they can come and they don't have to bring their own ramp. Somebody who needs a sign language interpreter should not have to bring their own sign language interpreter. There are people in the community that do this. It's not that expensive to cover it. It's like about $85 an hour. So
it's reasonable.
It's very reasonable. Yeah. So if you're putting on an event, just have one. Have a sign language interpreter there so that people that come in are welcomed if that's what they need.
And then there's also the word advocacy, which is in your name. What does that mean to you?
Advocacy means lending our voice to people that either don't know how to speak, don't have access to speaking, or don't know how to go about it. So giving voice to people that are sometimes considered voiceless. And so one of the things that we look at is the social definition of disability versus the medical model. So the medical model tells you if you have a disability, there's something wrong with you, we have to fix you. The social model says there are barriers that we build into society that keeps people from participating fully. How do we remove the barriers? The answer, like with everything else in life, is somewhere in between the two. Like no pure model is best. The best thing is to figure out what's best for this one person in front of me. And what I need to do is I need to ask them. Like, for example, at our agency, we have consultants who have different kinds of disabilities because I can't think of everything. Everybody else that works with us can't think of everything. So we need different voices at the table so that we can advocate more efficiently for them.
And how do you bring these voices to the table? Curious.
I meet them everywhere, and I'm always looking for opportunities. So one of the consultants that we have, for example, was somebody who came as a social work intern at her master's level. It's somebody born with cerebral palsy, uses a wheelchair for transportation, has significant limitations in her hands, so she has to use a computer program to be able to write her notes. And oddly enough, one of the benefits of COVID, she wanted to do her social work bachelor's level internship with us, and she couldn't because the university required that she do it in person. And she couldn't do it with us because we offer our services in people's homes and out in the community, and there's no way to guarantee that the places were always going to be accessible. And transportation for somebody who uses a power wheelchair can be challenging. So then COVID happened. We all know what happened with COVID. Everybody was working at home from Zoom and staying away from people. So now all of a sudden, it was okay for the university for her not to have to go out into the field and see people. So she came and worked with us. And now she's been a consultant for over 3 years.
Interesting. Now I'm thinking about the university. Don't have to name them.
Right,
but I spoke to another person, another autistic young lady, and her professor wanted the homework done in a certain way, which she couldn't do because of eye problems. So she went to the administration, and they had to accommodate her.
Right.
So this university, so she's in a power wheelchair. Would they not accommodate the wheelchair? And if they don't accommodate, what do we then do?
So they accommodated the wheelchair, and she did do her internship, but she had to go do her internship in another social service organization where the clients came into the organization. The difference between the two places was that we provide very few services in our office. Like if we have an office, if people want to come in, they certainly can. We have the space. It's accessible. But we don't make people come into our office. Our social workers go out to people's homes to visit them. It's really challenging. We're in Kendall, and we serve the entire Miami-Dade County. If you live in Homestead or Miami Gardens, and you don't drive a car, and you have 3 kids, how do you get to Kendall?
You don't.
You don't.
Yeah.
So then you don't get services. And we're the only organization that does what we do in Miami-Dade County. And so we just do it everywhere. Our social workers go to where people are.
Very nice. Now, the social work, what does that look like?
It looks with whatever the person needs. We call them success coaches because we don't like the idea that we are prescribing for somebody what they need. We meet with them, we identify what it looks like for them to be successful, and then we work together on a plan. And that could look like many things. Applying for Social Security benefits, going to IEP meetings, individualized education plan with the family, advocating with the school for, accommodations, because sometimes people are not so willing to accommodate, It can be a challenge. Work-related, we work with organizations to help them have employees that have disabilities and help them participate in the workforce.
Very nice. Now, you've seen a lot of shifts in the language. Like you just said, success coach. Something that kind of just like gnaws me is with the autistic kids is therapy. And what I prefer, it's probably not going to change for a long time, but I would prefer like tutoring. Like if my neurotypical boy is behind in his math, I don't get him a math therapist. I get him a math tutor.
Right.
Whereas with my daughter, anything she's behind on, it's therapy. Right. So that kind of gnaws me. Now, we were speaking earlier about how the language has changed. Like retarded, we don't use that anymore. What are the shifts in the language and why is that important?
So words have power.
Yes, and meaning.
And meaning. And so how you set up your language has a lot to do with what you're intending to do and how people feel. As I was saying, we have our social workers, our success coaches. We don't have a treatment plan. We have a success plan.
Very nice.
How do you want a success? Our families that we work with are not clients. They're families, and they're not cases. Like, I wouldn't want to be somebody's case. I would want to be a person
That's right,
that wants to succeed. And that's how we treat people. And so language is important. We talk about, it used to be like people first language was the preferred way to talk. And then as people in the disability community have gained power and have been able to express their opinion and we listen to them, some of the communities prefer to be called like the autism community. Most people in the autism community want to be called autistic because their thinking is they cannot separate themselves from the autism because it's the way the brain works. Kind of like if you're a right brain person versus a left brain person. It's kind of the same thing. I have a friend that has a theory about autism and the whole neurodivergent umbrella. And what he says is that it's really an adaptive function and an evolutionary function. And as we move into a world where we need more people that are hyper-focused and specialized, those traits come in very handy. And they're just ahead of the curve. Who knows, right? It's a theory and it's an opinion. But it's a nice way to look at it, better than there's something wrong with you, we got to fix you.
Yes. Now, it's interesting you bring up the people first language because as I was getting into this world, I would have non-autistic people call me out. No, you don't say that.
Right.
You say it like this.
Right.
And then I had this autistic violin duo on the podcast called Sophisticated Strings. And I asked them, like, what do you prefer?
Right.
And the one, she said, you know what? I don't like being called a person with autism because it sounds like luggage I carry around at the airport.
Right.
I'm an autistic person. It's my identity.
Right.
So I've had well-intentioned but misguided people, I would say.
Correct.
Like, chastise me.
Right.
You don't say it like that.
Right.
Then I have people with the actual condition saying, no, this is, and it's not, it wasn't just her. It was also her partner. I have other neurodivergent people tell me the same thing. So it's interesting how when you talk about people, you assume things. Right. But then when you talk to them, it can be a very different conversation than what you assumed. Right. It's like talking to little kids. I'm not saying they're little kids, but like you talk to your kids and you ask them what they want. Very often it's very different than what you thought they wanted. Right. Exactly.
Now, sometimes, with kids, which is why people who are autistic or people who have a disability are not children. That's one of the things that irks me when you hear even professionals, they function like a 2-year-old. Well, no, they don't function like a 2-year-old. They're a 20-year-old who functions differently than you do. How do we make them feel like they belong? And different communities have different feelings about it. And as you mentioned, they're well-intentioned, right? Because people want, the whole idea behind people first language is that you're a person first. We don't need to talk about your disability unless it's relevant. Like if I'm going to describe you to Tamara, I'm not going to say, he's a white guy, he's Hispanic, or unless it's relevant, right? He's Hispanic, he speaks Spanish. So you can communicate with him in Spanish. Then it becomes relevant. But other than that, I don't really care. Does it really matter? So it's the same thing with disabilities, right? And the idea behind people first language is that you're a person first and your disability could be or could not be relevant. Now, with identity first, and it comes primarily in the neurodivergent world, the deaf and hard of hearing also prefer to be called deaf and hard of hearing rather than a hearing impediment. It's a big insult. Somebody with cerebral palsy, most of them prefer to be people first language rather than I'm not a cerebral palsied.
Right, right.
You know, they are somebody that has cerebral palsy.
That's interesting.
So you have to ask people, like with everything else, right? Like some of us are Hispanic, some of us are Latinos, some of us are Latinx, some of us are, you know, we get to choose. So it's the same thing. Why would it be any different?
Yeah, I'm in the Latino Hispanic world myself, and I get confused sometimes.
Exactly.
And
I do too.
Yeah,
right.
people like on the West Coast will say it one way, East Coast different. Miami, it's its own little universe. I don't know what we say here. We say everything in Miami.
Right.
So it's very different.
Right.
Now, I want, before we go too far, I want to go back to your origin story. Mm-hmm. How did you end up being the president and CEO of
the Advocacy Network
Yes.
of Disabilities? So I started off as a consultant. They were originally it was more a grassroots organization. They got a grant to become more professionalized in terms of the case management, and they needed a licensed clinical social worker to develop an assessment and train their staff and all of that. And when I started working there were 2 social workers that were providing services to between 600 and 700 families a year. And that's a lot of work. So when I saw it, it was like, God, these people are just like handing out information, doing a little bit of hand-holding, but they're not really doing what's needed. And so there was a grant that happened. I saw the grant and I thought, oh, you know, you guys could do a lot more. So I talked to the CEO and I said, I think you should apply for this grant. Would you like me to help you write it? And I started writing the grant. And I started working there as just a fun project. My deal was mental health, and that's what had always been. And so as I started writing the grant, I started falling in love with the project that I was developing. And I was in a real conundrum because I had a job where I was running another grant, the substance abuse mental health grant, that I was also in love with. But I was like, this was like my own thing that I was creating. And I thought it was great. So I applied for the director job and I became the director. And then, you know, I started seeing that this agency was great and a leader within the disability community. But if we really wanted inclusion in the community at large, the voice of people with disabilities needed to be everywhere. And so I started doing that. And so then the board saw what I was doing and they created a job for me. They made me vice president for programs and services.
Very nice.
So I started doing that. Then the CEO retired and it was kind of a natural progression for me to become the CEO. And, you know, we've done some amazing things. Like now we're one of the 5, there's only 5 agencies that can refer people to low-income housing. Anything that comes from the Florida Housing Corporation has to go through 5 different agencies. And we're one of them. There used to be 4. And this is one of the examples of bringing your chair to the table. When I first applied like 3 years ago, I was told, oh, no, we already have 4 agencies in Miami-Dade County. We don't need one more. And I said, yes, but you don't have one that works with people with developmental disabilities.
What did they have?
They had an insurance company. They had a homeless assistance company. And they had different agencies, but none of the 4 agencies did anything with people with developmental disabilities.
Amazing.
So I started working on that, and it took me 3 years. We just last month became the 5th one.
You know, as an outsider hearing this story, I would just assume that you had always been there or somebody had been there, and then
No.
nobody had been there. And if you don't advocate
Correct.
for yourself and for the community,
Correct.
it doesn't happen by itself.
Right.
Which is a very common story I've heard with these young adults, whether they were in high school and being excluded, or work, or college. If their parents didn't advocate for them,
Right.
like the musicians, they talked about how they had tried out for the orchestra at their high schools, and they were excluded, and they knew by looking at the other kids, like, I'm better than a lot of the kids that got in. Why didn't I get in?
Right.
Then the parents stepped in and advocated, and they made them let them in.
Right.
And then the one that went to college, she had to advocate for herself with her professor that was just being, a hard ass. It must be done this way, and she couldn't because of eye problems.
Right.
And if you don't advocate, so like you being now a seat at that table, I would have assumed that you had you or somebody else
Right.
had always been there.
Oh.
And you hadn't been there.
Right. So people with developmental disabilities had no access to low-income housing, which is life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can tell you the story of like one of the moms we placed, single mom, 3 kids. 2 of the kids have disabilities. She was living in a hotel room with 3 kids, paying $1,500 a month because nobody would rent to her an apartment that she could afford because she had 3 kids, right? So people wanted her to have at least 2 bedrooms. In Miami, you cannot get a 2-bedroom apartment with $1,500 a month.
Nowhere in Miami. Nowhere.
In Miami, exactly. And so she was stuck in a room with her 3 kids, using all of her income to pay for her rent. She's now in a 4-bedroom apartment where she's paying less than $800 a month.
How nice. How nice.
And now she has money to pay for other things that her kid needs.
Well,
life-changing.
Absolutely. So to the moms, dads, the parents listening to this that are in that same situation,
Right.
where do they go for help?
So give us a call.
Okay.
I can't promise that we excuse me, I can't promise that we can solve every problem. There's plenty of problems that we can't solve, but there's 26 people at our agency that are willing to help. We work both in Miami-Dade and Broward County. And we can help with either finding an after-school program that's accessible. We work with the Children's Trust to make sure that every program that provides after-school services can accommodate a child with a disability, and we can pay for some supports in the after-school programs. We can help people access systems, and we can help them with the IEP and the school system process.
So even if you can't take them on, you don't turn them away in the sense that
We
you
don't
will tell them where to go.
Correct.
That's great.
Like if somebody calls and they don't meet our criteria, like if somebody calls and they're 25 and they have severe mental illness that happened after they turn 22, we know where to refer them. We don't say to anybody, oops, sorry, not our problem. Figure it out. Good luck.
So you just use the word your criteria. What do you mean by that?
So we serve kids with any disability up to age 22, any disability we serve. With adults, we serve developmental disabilities. And we use the federal definition of developmental disabilities, which means any disability that happened prior to age 22. So if you have a disability that happens from birth, then you don't have to show anything. But there are disabilities that we acquire. You know, that's the one thing with disability is the one community where you can belong at any given time. You're not born into it.
Well, I'm always learning stuff. So
Right.
you're saying that a disability you acquire, does that mean like an accident where you're now in a wheelchair or
An
something?
accident, a stroke,
Okay, a stroke. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
right.
Absolutely.
Muscular dystrophy can get diagnosed when you're in your 30s. Parkinson's, I mean, there's many disabilities. And if you live long enough, you'll eventually have a disability.
Now, for people that don't know, what is so important about the age of 22?
So the reason they're called developmental is because it interferes with your development. And the brain is not fully developed until about that age. And we just have to pick a number, right? So they pick 22 as the number. So any disability that happens before age 22, then it's considered developmental because it interferes with your development as a person. Once you're 22, you're considered to be an adult and developed, even though 18 is the legal age. If you have a disability, you get child services until you turn 22,
And
including Medicaid.
And I think that this is important, the 22, that for people that are listening, the parents especially, because they're the ones usually in charge of their kids. If you even suspect that your kid has a disability, there's no reason not to have a doctor look at them and get a diagnosis. Because if you're wrong, you're wrong.
Right.
But if you're right, now they can be plugged in to these services.
Right. And the earlier that you provide interventions, the better the outcomes. You know, like there's some kids who develop slower in speech. You help them with their speech. By the time they're 5, no longer a problem. So they just had a developmental delay. But if you don't intervene and you don't help them, then they turn to be 7, 8, 9 with speech problems or with other challenges. And then life is a little bit more difficult.
Now, you've been in this business for a long time, so there are some numbers that confuse me Because wherever I go, I hear different numbers. Maybe you can help me unpack these.
It might confuse me too.
Okay. So according to the CDC, 1 in 4 adults lives with disability. That means that about 700,000 people in Dade County have got a disability. But
Correct.
I went to the county website, their ADA section, so I looked this up. According to the county, there's only 250,000 people. Why is that gap? Do you know?
I think part of it is stigma, because in the county website, people have to self-identify.
Okay.
The 1 in 4 is, first of all, 1 in 4 counts the old people, right? Like in your 80s and 90s, where you have trouble walking and performing activities of daily living. A disability basically is a condition that interferes with 3 areas of your life.
What are they?
At least 3 areas, right?
At least 3, okay.
At least 3 areas of your life. It could be different things like asthma and breathing, different things in your life. So it has to interfere with 3 areas, whether that's work, recreation, taking care of yourself, cooking, cleaning, those sorts of things. And so that's a disability. So a lot of people have a hard time and don't identify as having a disability.
That makes sense.
Some people, deaf and hard of hearing, they don't think they have a disability.
Or dyslexia.
Or learning disability. A lot of people, they compensate, they learn, and, they move on.
Another number I found, I was on the APD website, which is the Agency of Persons with Disabilities. There are only 8,600 people in Miami-Dade registered with APD. Why? What do you think that's a huge difference there?
Registered with APD or on the waiting list for the waiver or receiving community-based services? Because there are many different people.
You know what? I didn't unpack that because and these are questions I don't know to even ask. But it just said register, so I don't know what that means. But it's still a very small number compared to 250,000.
Right, but those are people. So APD, even though it's called Agencies for Persons with Disabilities, it's only people with developmental disabilities.
Okay.
As the state of Florida defines it, which is a much narrower definition than the federal definition of disability and the CDC. So it's like 7 specific diagnoses. And if you don't have one of those 7, you don't qualify for services from APD. The last I checked, there was about 6,000 people on the waiting list to get the Medicaid waiver. The 8,600 may be the people that are you could be in a group home paid for by APD. You could be in a skilled nursing facility paid for by APD, or you could be receiving community services paid for by APD. And so I don't know where the 8,600, I know there's about 6,000 people on the waiting list waiting to get community-based services.
Interesting. As an outsider looking in, I'm a conspiracy theorist. So I'm like, there's some funny business here. But no, when somebody unpacks it, it makes sense.
Right.
And I'm glad that you did, because really it concerns me as a dad.
Right.
And as an advocate in this community.
Right.
So I just got the 2-minute warning. So I want to ask you 5 last questions before we wrap this up. So question number 1, Irie, is a word that best describes disability advocacy to you.
Empowering.
Empowering. Nice. I haven't gotten that answer before. That's a good answer. I like that. Second question. The biggest lesson you've learned from families?
Resilience.
Yes.
Resilience. I am in awe every day at some of the things that people can, and I get teary-eyed and emotional. Some of the things that people accomplish are just amazing.
What I would add to that, Irie, is it resilience, yes, but also don't think you can go it alone. Because there's a system out there, and people need to plug into it. And I'll talk to parents all the time. I'll say, there's this service, that service. They're like, I never heard of that.
Right.
And these are like grandparents, some of them, that have been in this world for a long time.
Right.
So, yes, be resilient.
Right.
But don't try to go it alone.
Right.
It's
and
really
don't go
hard.
to an IEP meeting without taking somebody with you.
Absolutely.
Even if it's just your next door neighbor.
Yes.
Bring somebody with you.
A calming person.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
Calming for the school staff sometimes.
Yeah, for everybody.
Right.
Okay. If you had a billboard on I-95, what message would it say?
We all belong.
We all belong. We all have a seat at the table.
Right. We all belong. And we all want the same things. Whether you have a disability
in one way or another.
Not, we all want the same thing.
Yes.
We all want to be loved and cared about and to contribute and to feel like we have a purpose.
And we belong.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay. A mentor or role model you look up to?
Oof. Angela Davis.
Nice. Why?
Not a popular choice.
No, and not an obvious one either.
Right.
I thought you were going to say Angela Mayu, but okay, why Angela Davis?
Angela Davis. So one of the things that I read that she wrote is like, we all can make a difference if we do it every day.
Yes, you're right. Get the reps in.
Right.
And the advantages accumulate, but sometimes over a very long arc of time.
Right.
But they accumulate it.
Right.
Okay. Last question. What gives you the most hope about Miami-Dade's future?
The people. The engagement that people have.
Yeah, I see Miami going in a really good direction.
I do too.
Yeah, you've been here. You're a lifelong Miamian, almost.
On and off since I was 12. Probably half the time here, half the time Canada, El Salvador, different places.
Well, I've been in Miami since the 70s. And so I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Miami, I just see it going in a really nice direction.
Me too.
So yeah, I'm very hopeful for our future.
Yeah.
Well, Irie, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Let's go ahead and turn to the camera and we'll sign off.
Okay.
This has been the Autism Podcast at Miami's Community Newspapers with Irie Diaz from the Advocacy Network on Disabilities. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.